Cuba, free territory in the Americas.
We're transmitting in English on our international shortwave frequencies and streaming real audio online at www.radiohc.cu.
President Díaz thanks the non-aligned movement, NAM, for its support to Cuba in the face of the blockade imposed by the United States and its explosive hostility against the island. We thank our brothers and sisters in the non-aligned movement for their permanent support for Cuba. In a more continuous time test, here's a report made in Bureau meeting in New York. They rejected the attempts to destabilize and interfere in the internal affairs of the island and demanded an end to the blockade, the President wrote on Twitter. The non-aligned document rejected the actions that promoted disorder in the Caribbean islands and considered them a flagrant violation of the principles and purposes of the United Nations Charter and international law. Azerbaijan holds the presidency of NAM, a mechanism for political coordination made up of 120 countries and with 15 other nations participate as observers. The General Director for the United States of the Cuban Foreign Ministry, Carlos Fernandez de Cosio, announced in an interview with MSNBC that Washington's actions against the island violate international law. In the statement, the official said that the U.S. government seeks to apply national laws to the country beyond its jurisdiction, which is unacceptable. The diplomat thus rejected the most recent measures of the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, which issued provisions against the Minister of the Revolutionary Armed Forces, SAR, Army Corps General Alvaro Lopez Piñera, and the National Special Brigade of the Ministry of the Interior, MININ. These actions have later practical impact since the Minister of Defense has no assets or bank accounts in U.S. territory, nor does he intend to vote in for a president, commented Fernandez de Castillo. Likewise, the Cuban government representative reiterated that the United States is trying to provoke a migratory crisis and responsible attitude that Havana has been warning about for months, and that it is possible to prevent. In addition, he asserted that internet access was interrupted on the island. Only some services were sporadically and intermittently suspended due to attacks on the network with the participation of Washington and large technology companies. As recognized by experts, this is an operation against the Antillean nation that uses the virtual world to spread false news and urge mobilization. It is a disinformation campaign, he said. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez says his country will ratify its commitment to unity during the 21st meeting of foreign ministers of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC. The head of the Cuban diplomacy arrived in Mexico on Friday to participate in the meeting, where he will also confirm the Caribbean nation's support for regional integration and the defense of its declaration as a zone of peace. The ministerial meeting taking place this Saturday constitutes the prelude to the summit of heads of states of CELAC member countries, scheduled for September 18th. The meeting coincides with the 238th anniversary of the birth of the liberator Simón Bolívar, to whom an extensive program will be dedicated throughout the weekend, the first part of which will be attended by the region's Minister of Foreign Affairs. The Cuban Ministry of Public Health reported on Saturday 7,732 new cases of SARS-CoV-2 and 68 deaths in the last hour. The Caribbean islands accumulate 324,115 diagnosed with the virus since March 11, 2020. and 2,271 deaths. The head of epidemiology of the Ministry of Public Health, Francisco Duran, stated in his regular television briefing, as of midnight, 39,521 positive cases were hospitalized. The territories with the highest infection rate were Havana with 1,394 cases, Matanzas with 1,358, Santiago-Cuba with 714, and Guantanamo with 632 cases. Cuban regulatory authorities approved Phase 2 of the clinical trial with the anti-COVID-19 vaccine candidate Aficionado to be carried out in the central province of Cienfuegos. The study called Soberano Centro will include 1,166 volunteers of both sexes in groups of 583 belonging to the municipalities of Palmira and Cruces between 19 and 80 years age. The Civil Vaccine Institute, ISB, leader of the project, announced. The Soberano 01 plus Soberano Plus scheme will be applied to one group, and the control group, placebo, will be administered the Soberano 02 plus Soberano Plus plan. Health personnel will evaluate adverse events during an hour observation period following the administration of each dose at the clinical site. Active and passive surveillance will also be performed with ambulatory follow-up until 28 days after the first and second doses are completed and 14 days after receiving the third dose. As a pilgrimage of bridges of love approaches Washington, D.C., the organizer of the Solidarity Action with the Cuban family planned for Lafayette Park this Sunday, July 25th, denounced plans by other right-wing sectors to disrupt the meeting. On Facebook, Carlos Lazo said hate platforms have begun to organize a counter-caravan to sabotage and oppose those who advocate for a bridge of love between Cuba and the United States. They have promised to bring hordes of thousands of people to oppose and silence those of us who will be there advocating for the Cuban family and an end to the blockade of Cuba, he said. Lazo added that many of these haters are the same ones who applauded and participated in violent acts at the front in Washington, D.C. on January 6th of this year. The activist said they had alerted the D.C. police, the FBI is alerted, the Park Police, and Special Operations, and that they all have stated their commitment to provide security for the event and to enforce the law against those who try to break it. Carlos Lazo concluded his rebuke, stating that nothing will stop them from holding the event, or that nothing will stop them from raising their voices of peace and hope that President Biden keeps his word and lifts the sanctions on the Cuban family. Vietnamese Foreign Minister Boris Hanson reaffirmed in Hanoi the close ties of friendship between his country and Cuba when he returned to the island's ambassador, Orlando Hernandez Guillen. The foreign minister also reiterated the historical stance of the Indo-Chinese nation against the U.S. blockade and said that amid the difficult situation that Cubans are going through due to that arbitrary policy and the COVID-19 pandemic, they have the support of the Vietnamese. For his part, Hernandez Guillen exposed the latest maneuvers of the White House to destabilize Cuba and the pressure it exerts on the member countries of the Organization of American States to sign a declaration against the largest island of the Antilles. The diplomat thanked the recent expressions of friendship and solidarity from the Vietnamese Foreign Ministry through its spokesman, Nancy Phuong. Both parties reaffirmed the will of their governments to work to raise the level of economic commercial relations, investment, and cooperation, mainly in the agricultural and biopharmaceutical sectors.
Thanks, Rach. Rach Gomez with our national news here on Radio Havana Cuba. Now it's time for our international news. Here's Gavin Jones.
The Venezuelan government has announced it is ready to open a new dialogue with the opposition, scheduled to be held in Mexico, with the aim of reaching agreements in favor of the country's sovereignty. President Nicolas Maduro stated, quote, "We're ready to go to Mexico to sit down at the dialogue table with the opposition, with a realistic Venezuelan agenda for peace, so that all unilateral, coercive measures are lifted." The Venezuelan leader indicated that in order to establish this agenda, the spokespersons of his Bolivarian government for these efforts have already established communications with different delegations of the Venezuelan opposition and with the government of Norway. Hector Rodriguez, governor of Miranda State, and Jorge Rodriguez, president of the National Assembly, are the official spokespersons for the current Nicolas Maduro government. Ivan Lima, the Bolivian Minister of Justice and Institutional Transparency, has reported that in August the government will publish the report of the interdisciplinary group of independent experts, the GIEI, on the acts of violence and violations of human rights that occurred after the coup d'etat in 2019. Lima explained, quote, "From the delivery of the report this Friday, the government of Bolivia has 10 working days to review it. I estimate that this would happen around August the 5th. The first week of August, it will be made public." In November of 2020, the GIEI started investigating massacres in the Sacaba, Cochabamba, where during the fierce repression of the demonstrations that rejected the coup d'etat, 10 people were killed by police and the armed forces, as well as in Sencata, El Alto, where due to bullet wounds there were also 10 people left dead. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has urged Israel to honor the extradition request for Tomás Zerón, the former chief director of the Criminal Investigation Agency, the AIC, for accusations against him of tampering with evidence in the Ayotzinapa case. In his daily press conference, López Obrador said, quote, "There has been no response yet. Hopefully the government of Israel will act with respect for human rights. The extradition of this public official is being requested for acts of torture, amongst other things." López Obrador also pointed to an article published by the U.S. media citing anonymous sources that revealed that Israel has stopped the extradition process of Zerón in response to Mexico's vote in favor of investigating human rights violations in Palestine. The Mexican president indicated that Marcelo Ebrard, Mexican Secretary of Foreign Affairs, had subsequently sent a note to the Israeli embassy in order to establish the veracity of the version spread by the U.S. press. Zerón is not only linked in Latin American nation to the disappearance of the 43 students from the Ayotzinapa Rural Teachers College in Iguala, Guerrero, Mexico, but also being allegedly responsible for the contracting of espionage services with the Israeli company, the SSO Group. A report by the UK's Prosperity Index of the Legatum Institute, published on Thursday, shows that the COVID-19 crisis has weakened prosperity in the United States, but even before the pandemic, mass shootings, elevated obesity levels, and mental health issues have taken their toll on the Americans' quality of life. A conservative-leaning London-based think tank said in its 2021 United States Prosperity Index that the U.S. still remains one of the most prosperous countries in the world, ranking 18 out of 167 nations. The index, which Legatum publishes annually, measures the U.S. with prosperity using 11 criteria: safety and security, personal freedom, governance, social capital, business environment, infrastructure, economic quality, living conditions, health, education, and natural environment. Legatum's report found that while prosperity in the U.S. has been on the rise for more than a decade, it remains unevenly distributed. On Friday, as floods submerged swaths of central China, villagers were evacuated over makeshift bridges. A cleanup is underway in Zhengzhou, where at least 33 people died earlier this week after days of torrential rain. In Henan province, millions have been affected by floods submerging roads and railways and trapping people without food or fresh water. Zhengzhou, home to 12 million people and the capital of Henan, has borne the brunt of the extreme wet weather, deluged by the equivalent of a year's worth of rain in 3 days. On Friday, firefighters continued to pump muddy water from tunnels, including the metro system, where at least 12 people drowned inside an underground train. In neighborhoods still immersed in waist-high water, rescuers and excavators, inflatable boats and other makeshift rafts to pull some residents to safety and to deliver food and supplies to people still trapped in high-rise apartment blocks. According to the French press agency, the Agence France-Presse, or the AFP, more than 140 Palestinians have been injured in clashes with Israeli troops during protests against illegal Israeli settlements, outposts in the Flashpoint village of Beta in the occupied West Bank. AFP said that hundreds of Palestinians have gathered to protest the nearby illegal outpost of Eviatar. The area has seen regular demonstrations against the expansion of illegal settlement on Palestinian land. The Israeli army responded, quote, "Over the last several hours, a riot was instigated in the area of the Givat Eviatar outpost south of Nablus. Hundreds of Palestinians hurled rocks at the Israeli Defense Forces, commonly known in Israel by the Hebrew acronym Sahal or IDF troops. They responded with riot disposal gear." The report added that 2 lightly injured soldiers were taken to hospital. The Palestinian Red Crescent said 146 Palestinians were hurt during the clashes, including 9 by live fire, 34 by rubber-coated bullets, and 87 by tear gas. Jewish settlers set up the illegal Eviatar outpost in May, erecting rudimentary concrete homes and shacks in a matter of weeks. At least 20 refugees are presumed to have drowned off the coast of Libya in the Mediterranean Sea. This week past, the Libyan Coast Guard intercepted 7 vessels and apprehended hundreds of refugees, including children, as they attempted to reach Europe. Amnesty International reports that in the first half of this year, over 7,000 refugees have been detained and forcibly returned to prison camps in Libya. Over 1,100 people have perished so far this year, as the number of refugees who have died while attempting to reach European soil by sea has more than doubled compared with the first 6 months of 2020.
Laura Jones on the International News Desk here at Radio Havana, Cuba. Radio Havana, Cuba presents Cuba's chief meteorologist, Dr. Jose Rubiera, with the Weather Report.
Hello everyone, everywhere. I'm Jose Rubiera with the Weather Report, brought to you by Radio Havana, Cuba. And this is the weather forecast for tomorrow, Sunday, July 25th, 2021. A day in which some scattered showers are expected in the Canadian provinces of British Columbia and Quebec, but more isolated elsewhere. In the United States, scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms will occur, mostly in the northern part of the country, but isolated elsewhere. Isolated areas of showers will be possible in Mexico, mainly near and along the Pacific coast. In the meanwhile, there will be showers and thunderstorms over Central America, mostly from Nicaragua to Panama. They could become strong in areas of Costa Rica. In the Caribbean area, some isolated showers and thunderstorms are forecasted, mainly in the Bahamas and in eastern Cuba, but also in the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Temperature will be 26 degrees, 79 Fahrenheit in Calgary, 25 degrees, 77 Fahrenheit in Montreal, and 30 degrees, 86 Fahrenheit in Toronto. In the United States, there will be a temperature of 36 degrees, 97 Fahrenheit in Washington, D.C., 20 degrees, 68 Fahrenheit in Los Angeles, and 31 degrees, 88 Fahrenheit in Miami. In Mexico, temperature will be 37, 99 Fahrenheit in Merida, Yucatan, and 35 degrees, 95 Fahrenheit in Ciudad Obregón. While in Mexico City we have a temperature of 21 degrees, 70 Fahrenheit. In Central America, temperature will continue between 25 to 32 degrees, 77 to 90 Fahrenheit, and in the Caribbean islands between 27 and 30 degrees, 81 to 86 Fahrenheit. In Cuba, temperature of 33 degrees, 91 Fahrenheit is forecasted in Havana, 31 degrees, 88 Fahrenheit in Varadero, and 29 degrees, 84 Fahrenheit in Cayo Largo and Trinidad. While there will be 28 degrees, 82 Fahrenheit in Cayo Santa Maria and in Cayo Largo. And this was the weather report. See you again on Monday. And may all of you have a very, very happy weekend.
The Weather Report with Cuba's Chief Meteorologist, Dr. Jose Rubiera. Thank you, Radio Havana Cuba, thanks for joining us on your radio. On this date in history, July the 24th, in the year 1783, Simón Bolívar, the liberator, El Libertador, was born in Venezuela. Bolívar was a military and political leader who played an instrumental role in the establishment of Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Peru, and Colombia as sovereign states independent of Spanish rule. His full name was Simón José Antonio de la Santísima Trinidad Bolívar y Palacios, and is known as the Liberator, which is much easier to say. Simón Bolívar, born on this date, El Libertador, 238 years ago today. Also born on this date in history, but a little bit closer, in 1908, Blas Roca Calderón was born in Manzanillo, located in Oriente, eastern Cuba. Blas Roca was a Cuban Communist Party leader in the 1920s and 30s, elected as Secretary General of the party in 1934. He was the editor of the Communist Party newspaper Hoy, and following the triumph of the Cuban Revolution in 1959, he served as a member of the political bureau of the Central Committee of the Communist Party. Born in this state 113 years ago, Blas Roca died in Havana at the age of 78 in the year 1987. And 16 years ago today, on July the 24th, 2005, the multinational TV giant Telesur began transmissions from Caracas, the Venezuelan capital. Telesur promotes regional integration, provides truthful information about international and regional events, becoming a major player in the news business, respected around the world. The slogan, Nuestro Norte es el Sur, our North, our guiding star, is the South, refers to the focus of Telesur's broadcasts. The battle of the South, the Third World, against the industrialized First World, the North. Telesur, born on this date 16 years ago. Now let's go over to our editorial desk for our commentary viewpoint with Susanna Neves.
The intense heat wave that has been affecting western Canada and the northwestern and western United States for several days, which experts attributed to an area of high pressure stationed in the atmosphere, turned into the dreaded nightmare with raging wildfires almost out of control. In the Canadian region of British Columbia, some 270,000 hectares of forest were burned, and smoke became a problem in cities such as Edmonton, Calgary, and Toronto, where authorities warned of the risk of respiratory problems. More than 5,700 people were evacuated, and another 32,000 are under a high danger warning because the weather conditions with dry and warm air favor the multiplication of the fires, which already number in the hundreds in these territories. The government has deployed some 500 soldiers to support the more than 3,000 firefighters battling the flames, and some countries, such as Mexico, have begun to send aid to control the situation. On the other side of the border, in the United States, the problem is also very serious, and there's much concern because these are only the first days of the usual fire season. According to a recent report by the Agence Française de Presse, a forest area equivalent to the size of the city of Los Angeles has already been totally destroyed in Oregon. Smoke and ash are rising up to 10 kilometers high, and due to the wind, places as far away as New York are already beginning to feel the effects of the haze. Both sides of California, Sierra Nevada are affected by fires that are advancing at great speed because the grass and foliage are very dry and burn with extraordinary ease. The National Weather Service warned that, unlike other years, when the smoke disperses as it reaches the east, now it remains concentrated in the atmosphere and becomes an additional problem. No one among the experts doubts that the severity of this phenomenon during the last 2 years has to do with climate change. A problem that in various ways is affecting the whole world, as happened with the floods in Europe and a few days ago in China. Despite this evidence and the warning that we're almost reaching a point of no return, there's still no sign of stopping the emission of polluting gases into the atmosphere, the main culprits of global warming, and the disaster that is already at our doorstep.
Susanna Nieves with our commentary viewpoint for today. And you tune to Radio Havana Cuba. Thanks for joining us on your radio. You may be listening to our shortwave international radio frequencies heard around the world, in Asia, Africa, Latin America. We're all over the place on your radio. Coming up, we've got the very popular radio program, Cristina Escobar and Cuba Today.
Hi, this is Cuba Today. Hi, I'm Cristina Escobar, and you are listening to Radio Havana Cuba. Several organizations are showing support to the Cuban people in times in which solidarity should be international practice. People sensitive with the struggles of Cuba because of the pandemic are sending donations and expressing what they take from the riots that happened in this country last week. I'm talking to you from my home in Havana. We have less than 10 minutes, so please bear with me. Cuba has an advantage in this pandemic. A strong scientific community and a biopharmaceutical industry that answered fast to this health emergency. This translates into the newsworthy fact that this is the first Latin American country that developed its own homemade vaccine. Not one, but 5 candidates. One of them is already a vaccine approved for emergency use by the local authorities, and another one has the WHO required efficacy as proven after the clinical trials. The other 3 candidates are being tested on volunteers and in children. However, the growing curve of confirmed cases and the number of daily deaths puts Cuba's otherwise a strong health system under tremendous stress, and the load of patients has been located in hospital corridors and in emergency hospitals posted in different cities of the island. Medicines and personal protective equipment and medical supplies are needed badly. One of the talking points of the smear campaign against Cuba's fight against the pandemic is that this country, out of pride, doesn't accept donations and that it needs a humanitarian intervention and euphemism, a military intervention. That's why it's great to tell you that donations have been received for months now, and more recently, a shipment of 6 million syringes was received in the port of Mariel to the west of Havana. This is the making of a coalition of solidarity organizations from the United States. The members collected this valuable donation to help Cuba conduct its vaccination program against COVID-19. The initiative is part of a fundraising campaign to send medical supplies to the Caribbean nation to support the confrontation of the pandemic. The logistics of the donations were made by Global Health Partners, a humanitarian organization that has shipped medicines and supplies to Cuba during the last 27 years. Several U.S. organizations opposed to the blockade joined the fundraisers, such as Code Pink, Bridges of Love, the National Network on Cuba, and the No Embargo Movement. In a press conference at the Cuban Embassy in Washington, the Solidarity activists voiced support for improving diplomatic relations. Medea Benjamin, a member of the group and active pacifist, a woman that has been in Cuba many times and knows the situation here, said they will continue to collect funds to send not only syringes, but other medical supplies, including antibiotics, painkillers, contraceptives, vitamins, and medicines for people with hypertension, cancer, and diabetes. The activists highlighted the support they have received from Cuban Americans, thanks to the work of Professor Carlos Lazo and his Fuentes de Amor project, or Bridges of Love. Lazo, a Cuban-American Spanish teacher that lives in Seattle, founded Bridges of Love to raise awareness and promote political activism against the U.S. sanctions on the Cuban people. He's doing a walk as we speak from Miami to Washington that will take several days to demand the lifting of the blockade right there where Joe Biden lives. We talked to about this in a previous show.
Meanwhile, in another country that has an active solidarity with Cuba, and it has been like that for decades, there, all the voices have been raised to express how the blockade affects the Cuban workers. Unite, the UK's leading union, has declared its belief that recent disturbances in Cuba have, at their root cause, the inhumane blockade imposed by the United States on Cuba, and which adversely affects many countries that wish to trade with Cuba, they wrote in a press release. Unite, which has long supported progressive causes in Latin America, fully acknowledges the essential grievances of Cuban workers and their families due to shortages of food, power, and medicines that became more acute during the Trump presidency and have not been alleviated under President Biden. Unite General Secretary Len McCloskey said Florida was held by Trump in last year's presidential election. Biden, with an eye on a possible re-election campaign, has effectively thrown in his lot with the extreme right wing in Miami, leading members of which, including the mayor of Miami, have even advocated airstrikes against Cuba. In the press release, Unite reminds the international community that the United Nations estimates that the blockade has cost the Cuban economy $130 billion. Also, they say something quite important to understand what's going on in this country. They said funding from the United States for Cuban opposition groups since Trump assumed the presidency has amounted to $17 million. Mr. McCloskey added that the simplest measure President Biden could take to avert any crisis in Cuba would be to lift the blockade. The Cubans already possess the necessary infrastructure to ensure that materials and medicines get to where they are most needed. Talk of the humanitarian corridor, said McCloskey, is cover for U.S. intervention from Guatemala in 1954 to the Chile in 1973 and elsewhere. More recently, U.S. intervention in Latin America has never been beneficial for working people. In the UK, several unions have supported Cuba for years, and the leading organization, Cuban Solidarity Campaign, has articulated many initiatives to spread the word and help the British people know the reality of this country, as the local media tends to give a quite politicized landscape of the island. While facing a slander campaign showing Cuba as a failed state, as the official line from Washington dictates, friendship and solidarity prevail. This is Cuba Today. The purpose here is to put in context what's going on in this country so you can make sense of what the media is talking about regarding this always misunderstood and manipulated Cuban reality. I am Cristina Escobar. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, Christina. Cristina Escobar. We'll see you on Monday, or we'll listen to you on Monday with Cuba Today. She's on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and also on Saturdays here. We have a very popular radio program, Cuba Today. Cristina Escobar. She's very popular also on TV. She's a television journalist as well as radio here on Radio Havana Cuba. In TNC, Radio Havana Cuba, coming to you on our social networks, las redes sociales. You can find us and like us on Facebook. Check us out on Twitter. You can tweet us on Twitter. On Twitter. Is it Twitter or Twitter? I always get confused. I'm usually confused. We can tweet anyway. And we can also check you out there on Telegram. We've got a channel there on Telegram. Radio Havana Cuba. We're everywhere on your radio.
You are tuned to Radio Havana Cuba, and this is the Jazz Play. And we are remembering the music of great Cuban pianist Frank Emilio Flynn. Along with Perochin, Frank Emilio established the proverbial bridge between the old soneros and danzón masters such as Bebo Valdés and modern musicians such as Chucho Valdés, Emiliano Salvador, Hernán López Nusa, and Hilario Duran. Up next, there are two tracks. One is Should Stand Up. It's named after a famous nightclub in Havana, and Los Amigos, the name of one of the groups he played with.
For Radio Havana Cuba, the jazz plays, I'm Jorge Millares.
Radio Havana Cuba, broadcasting from Cuba, free territory in the Americas.
We're transmitting in English on our international shortwave frequencies and streaming real audio online at www.radiohc.cu.